Hey Internet, SD just got back from the creepy side of YouTube and is in need of some psychological help. But first, I want to share with you the 14 creepiest Wikipedia articles ever. And stick around for a bonus creepy YouTube video that will melt your f***ing mind.
I guess you could say things are getting pretty serious.
Number 14. John Murray Spear was a spiritualist clergyman who in 1852 claimed he was in contact with a group of people known as the Association of Electrizers, which included spirits. In other words, ghosts of dead people like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Quincy Adams. Spear and some followers hid out in a wooden shed to build a mechanical messiah called the New Motive Power, which was made out of copper, zinc, and magnets. The robot savior never worked and was dismantled. Number 13. In 1962, in the village of Kashasha in the country, now known as Tanzania, 3 girls at a private school for girls began to laugh. The laughter began to spread throughout the school, with 95 of the 159 students being affected. The laughter lasted anywhere from just a couple of hours for up to 16 days. The administration was forced to send the students home and close the school down temporarily. Well, that's when the laughter began to spread throughout the students' villages. In the end, 14 schools were shut down and over 1,000 people caught the laughing bug. It was all attributed to mass hysteria, or mass psychogenic illness. I personally would like to think it was because they watched videos from serious delivery. Number 12. The Bunny Man is an urban legend about a man who attacks innocent people with an axe while wearing a bunny costume. The first reported sighting of a Bunny Man was in October of 1970 from a couple who parked on the side of the road to talk. Just moments later, the front passenger window was smashed, and a man in a white bunny costume began to scream that they were on private property. As the couple drove away, they found an axe on the car's floorboard. When the couple described the assailant to the police, the man described him as wearing a white suit with long bunny ears. His fiancée said he was wearing something white and pointed like the hood of a Klansman. So either it was Donnie Darko or this guy. Number 11. Underneath the cemetery church of All Saints in Sedlec, a city in the Czech Republic, there is a small Roman Catholic chapel that contains up to 70,000 human skeletons. If having 70,000 human skeletons isn't strange enough, they use them to turn the chapel into some fucked up version of IKEA by making decorations and furniture out of them. Now, how would you like to have this chandelier hanging over your dining room table? Number 10. During World War II, the Imperial Japanese Army created various units to covertly research biological and chemical warfare using live human beings as their test subjects. Unit 731 was the most notorious unit out of them all, and alone counted for up to 250,000 victims, including men, women, and children who died during the experiments. Number 9. Charles Bonnet syndrome, or visual release hallucinations, are terms describing when a person who has either partial or severe blindness experiences complex visual hallucinations. These hallucinations occur often and usually involve characters or objects that are smaller than normal. The hallucinations are only visual and usually involve faces, cartoons, or complex colored patterns. These hallucinations can last for a few seconds or all day, with some people experiencing the effects for years. Now, there is no treatment except to first understand you're not actually going crazy. Number 8. How would you like to be sitting there and not realize that your hand has on its own and without your control started to move and grasp nearby objects? And even when you do realize it, you still can't control it, to the point that with the one hand you can control, you must restrain it. It's a neurological disorder and is rare, and usually occurs when the brain is somehow affected by things like surgery, a stroke, an aneurysm, or occurs with people who suffer degenerative brain conditions like Alzheimer's. Number 7. Now, how would you like to live your life constantly believing that your friends, spouse, parents, and even the family dog has been replaced with an identical-looking imposter? For those who suffer from the Capgras delusion, it's all too real. This delusional misidentification syndrome most commonly affects people who have been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia or suffer from dementia or some kind of brain injury. In some cases, patients reported not just that someone had been replaced, but that time had been warped as well.
I got up the other day and everything in my apartment had been stolen and replaced with an exact replica. Couldn't believe it. I called my roommate and I said, "Come here, look at this stuff. It's all an exact replica. What do you think?" He said, "Do I know you?"
Number 6. In order to conduct a successful head transplant, it would involve decapitating the patient and then grafting their head onto another body. Sound implausible? Well, it's actually been done with dogs, monkeys, and rats successfully, I might add. The first time was in 1908 when Dr. Charles Guthrie grafted one dog's head onto the side of another and created the world's first man-made two-headed dog. The donor head even went so far as to bite the ear of the dog it was attached to. In 1970, a group of scientists from Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland transplanted the head of one monkey onto another monkey's body. It was considered such a success the animal could see, taste, smell, and hear everything. As of this writing, there is a human volunteer scheduled to be the first human head transplant sometime in December of 2017. Currently, there is no technology to reattach the severed spinal cord and would render any recipient of such a procedure a quadriplegic. Number 5. What would be better than a remote-controlled car or drone? A remotely guided rat, otherwise known as a ratbot. In 2002, Sanjeev Talwar and John Chapin at the State University of New York Downstate Medical Center implanted electrodes into the brains of rats. The rodents are equipped with a small backpack that contains a radio receiver and electrical stimulator. The rats receive stimulation remotely, which they feel in either the right or left whiskers. Through training and conditioning, the rat can then be guided from afar. These rats are being trained for bomb detection. Their size and ability to control them remotely allows them access areas humans and current bomb robots can't go. This may sound like a joke or the plot of some new comic book movie until you find out DARPA provides most of the funding for research. Number 4. Be wary of buying jars of honey from apothecaries in China. Why? Well, mellified man, or human mummy confection, is the process of steeping a human cadaver in honey for the purpose of creating some sweet healing spread for your toast. Now, very little is mentioned of this process outside of secondhand accounts and dates back to the 16th century. When an elderly man was approaching death, he would donate his body to the science of that time. The man would stop eating anything other than honey and would go so far as to even bathe in it. Eventually, the man would die and his body would then be placed into a stone coffin filled with honey. The coffin wouldn't be open for at least 100 years to give it time to turn into some sort of sweet jelly mess that, when consumed, could purportedly heal broken bones and other illnesses. Number 3. The first time I ever heard of this story was when I was about 8 years old from a book in my school library. Sometime around February of 1855 in East and South Devon, England, the morning after a heavy snowfall, residents came out of their homes to find hoof-like marks in the snow. The tracks covered areas as far as 40 to 100 miles. How did they get their name Devil's Footprints? Well, many stories and images depict Satan and anything evil as having cloven hooves instead of feet. So of course, instead of ruling out possible animals in the area that had cloven hooves, it's safe to assume it was Satan. Theories behind the phenomenon range from hopping mice or kangaroos. Yes, some privately owned kangaroos in the area had recently escaped. Or it could be mass hysteria. I, for one, still think Satan did it. Number 2. Dr. Henry Howard Holmes is considered to be one of the first documented serial killers. He loved killing so much that during the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, he opened up a hotel that was specifically designed to satiate his lust for blood. This hotel would later be termed the Murder Castle. The upper 2 floors of the building house not only his personal office, but over 100 windowless rooms with doorways that lead to brick walls as well as stairways that lead to nowhere, and doors that could only be opened from the outside. His victims were mostly females that worked for him. He would lock them in soundproof rooms that he fitted with gas lines so he could asphyxiate them at will. Others he would lynch them in a room dubbed the secret hanging chamber, or left to suffocate in a soundproof vault near his office. The bodies would then be removed of all flesh and organs until nothing was left but a skeleton, which he then sold to local medical schools. He eventually confessed to 27 murders, but the actual number could be well over 200. And now get ready for a creepy bonus video. But first I want to recognize some of our commenters on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and keep those comments coming, and we will include you in our next video. And now, number 1 on our list of the 14 creepiest wiki pages ever. Now, what if I told you that the serial killer, known as the original Night Stalker, still roams free? You would probably mention the name of Richard Ramirez, a serial killer who was arrested and convicted for crimes in the mid-1980s known as Night Stalker crimes. But during a 10-year period from 1976 to 1986, someone murdered at least 10 people in Southern California. From 1979 through 1986, at least 50 women were sexually assaulted by the same man. He was first known as the East Area Rapist, but then in 2001, those rapes were linked by DNA to the murders in Southern California. He was given the name the original Night Stalker, and to this day, the serial killer and rapist has never been caught. The last known contact with the psycho was in 1991 when he called one of his victims just a taunter.